The last time I laid eyes on him, he had just stepped out of the confines of high school. Slender, clumsy, perpetually ensnared in a digital realm or a debate with his mother. In those days, he was merely her son, a figure who barely registered in my reality, existing only in the brief, courteous exchanges we shared in the kitchen over steaming cups of coffee. As I opened the door to my friend's house, I was struck by the sight of him. Taller, broader, his presence more substantial and intentional. In that moment, I sensed a shift beneath my skin. It wasn't merely his face, though it had aged with a certain refinement, the jawline now more defined, the area around the eyes softened with time. His gaze held a depth that suggested recognition, not of a mere acquaintance from his mother's past, but of someone deserving of his attention in the present moment. He smiled first, and I instinctively replied, even as an unnamed tension coiled within my chest. My friend welcomed me with her familiar, cheerful banter, yet my focus continued to wane. I observed the way he rested against the kitchen counter, the tension in his forearm muscles as he reached for a glass, and the shift in his voice to a low, dry timbre. He remained mostly silent that evening, not addressing me directly, yet each time I glanced up, I found him observing, not with a stare, but with a quiet attentiveness, as if he were attempting to uncover something about me that I was unaware I was revealing. Dinner unfolded in a relaxed manner, steeped in familiarity, brimming with the kind of well-worn tales that old friends recount when the well of genuine conversation runs dry. He remained largely silent, offering smirks or half-hearted laughs that cut a bit too keenly. Though my friend appeared oblivious, I was acutely aware. I observed it all. The atmosphere in the room exuded an unexpected warmth. I found myself continually readjusting the neckline of my blouse, acutely conscious of the soft fabric brushing against my collarbone. At a certain moment, I took my leave to the bathroom, seeking the refreshing touch of cold water on my wrists. I gazed into the mirror, confronted by a reflection that felt foreign, obscured by the very things I sought to conceal. Upon my return, they were in the midst of finishing dessert, and he rose to assist in clearing the plates. He extended his hand toward mine before I could grasp it, and his fingers grazed against my own, ever so gently, just enough to erase the words I had intended to utter next. Once I finished my coffee, I rose to depart. My friend mentioned some laid-back plans for the weekend. I inclined my head and extended my arms for embraces. As I approached the door, he slipped behind me and opened it before my hand could even grasp the handle. "Drive carefully," he murmured, his breath brushing against my neck like a warm whisper. I shifted a bit, scanning his expression for any hint of mockery or a playful glimmer. Yet, his lips did not curve into a smile. His expression remained a mystery, teetering on the edge of indifference. Then he remarked that it was a pity they lived so near, as it complicated matters further. With that, he took a step back, leaving the door ajar, his gaze finally drifting away. As I sat in the car, my hands quivered ever so slightly on the steering wheel. I reassured myself that it was trivial, merely a young man attempting to be witty, probing limits that were never there. Yet, on that particular night, as I shed my clothes in the bathroom, I caught myself gazing at my own form in a new light, neither with judgment nor with mere curiosity, but with a kind of focused awareness that had long eluded me. I let my fingers glide across my collarbone, mimicking the way I had observed his gaze linger there moments before. I opened my underwear drawer and paused, gazing at the delicate white lace that had remained untouched for months. A sensation awakened within me, not a recollection but rather a feeling akin to eager expectation. My husband lay in bed, half asleep, engrossed in something on his tablet. He glanced upward, offered a fleeting smile, and then redirected his attention to the screen. I reclined next to him, quiet, my attire still partially in place. He remained oblivious. Perhaps he was aware yet opted to remain silent. That was the manner in which we operated recently, a soft and courteous evasion of matters we struggled to articulate. In the shadows, I revisited that instant at the threshold, his voice whispering near my ear, the lingering silence before he spoke. I was aware he would be nearby, certain I would encounter him once more, and though I hesitated to acknowledge it, A part of me longed for that more than anything else I had desired in weeks. As I shifted onto my side, turning my back to my husband, I felt the weight of my thighs pressing together. Gradually, imperceptibly. It wasn't precisely desire. Rather, it was the lingering sensation of being noticed, and I believe that was what I had been yearning for all along. It was never my intention to encounter him again so quickly. The thought had settled in my mind since that evening, weaving its way into the quieter moments of my days, while folding laundry, preparing dinner, and even as I brushed my teeth with my husband beside me. The thought crept in uninvited, a dissonant whisper beneath the calm, akin to the persistent murmur of a light glowing softly in a distant room. Yet, in its subtle harshness, life appears to perceive the moments when something within you begins to change. It was a Tuesday, etched in my memory as the day designated for laundry. I had departed the house in a state of disarray. A cotton dress, devoid of makeup, with hair casually pulled back into an unremarkable style. I visited my friend's home merely to return a baking dish. I had no intention of lingering here. I slipped in through the back door without a second thought, just as I had done countless times before, without even bothering to knock. She was absent from the house. The house stood in silence. In the dimly lit hallway, I paused, dish in hand, poised to place it on the counter and quietly retreat into the shadows. Yet he was present. I was unaware of his presence. He materialized unexpectedly at the threshold of the kitchen, bare feet whispering against the floor, cradling a coffee mug, his eyes heavy with remnants of sleep. "Hey!" he said, his voice gravelly from sleep. "I didn't notice your arrival." "I merely dropped this off," I responded swiftly, raising the dish a fraction as though that clarified all. He entered the kitchen, resting against the counter. His t-shirt clung in ways that challenged my ability to maintain focus. He appeared as though he had just rolled out of bed, clearly unprepared for company. In that fleeting instant, a wave of foolishness washed over me as I stood there, married, almost double his years, cradling a dish as if plucked from the pages of a suburban stereotype. "Would you care for a cup of coffee?" he inquired. I ought to have declined. Every fiber of my being was aware of that. Yet I inclined my head in agreement. This encounter seemed anything but coincidental. It hung in the air. We remained standing, confronting one another in the stillness of that all-too-familiar kitchen. I took a sip of the coffee. It was intensely bitter. I was indifferent. He studied me, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Wasn't expecting company," he remarked. "I had no intention of remaining here." "Have you always been this spontaneous?" I arched an eyebrow. "Do you often find yourself at ease while strolling about in such a state of undress?" He flashed a grin. "It all hinges on the observer." Once more, the silence envelopes the space, unfazed. A weightier matter. His eyes traveled from my face to my collarbone and then descended further. The atmosphere thickened, a palpable tension hanging in the silence between us. "I ought to take my leave," I remarked. Yet I remained still. He placed his mug on the table. "Ought you to?" My gaze was fixed upon him. I yearned to utter a dismissive remark, something so airy it might drift away from the room, yet silence enveloped me instead. He advanced with measured intent. First a step, then another. The edge of the kitchen counter pressed against my back, its coolness a startling contrast to the warmth of my skin, filtered only by the delicate fabric of my dress. He remained still, hovering too near, without making contact. He confessed, "I have been thinking about you." The words struck with an unexpected intensity. He was youthful, daring, perhaps even impulsive, yet his voice carried no hint of arrogance, only truthfulness, and that shattered me more than anything else ever could. I chose not to respond. I was unable to do so. His hand rose, almost with a sense of leisure, and his fingers brushed against my jaw, not in a possessive manner, but rather with a gentle caress of the back of his fingers. My skin ignited in the wake of his presence. And then it occurred. He leaned in with a deliberate slowness, giving me the chance to pull away, to laugh it off, to change the course of the moment. However, I did not. I tilted my head instinctively, my eyes drifting shut just as his lips brushed against mine. The kiss lacked tenderness. It was resolute. It was a heat, abrupt and all-encompassing, akin to the moment a match ignites, flaring to life before contemplation can take hold. My hands were lost, unsure of their destination. One hand rested upon his chest, while the other clutched the edge of the counter. I savored the coffee, accompanied by an elusive essence, something pressing, something more vibrant than the feelings I recalled. It endured for mere seconds, perhaps stretching into something more. I withdrew first, breath snagged in my throat, heart pounding. "Can't," I murmured. Yet I remained still. He gazed at me, his eyes deeper in hue than they had been previously. "You have already accomplished that." A noise emanates from the outside world. Perhaps the sound of footsteps, a door of a car, divided the instant in half. I took a step back, almost sending the dish tumbling, placed it with a bit too much force upon the counter. "I must leave," I reiterated once more. My voice trembled, and I loathed the fact that he could perceive it. He allowed me to continue, merely inclined the head in acknowledgement. "Take your time and I'll catch you later." I stepped out of the house, resolute, not daring to glance behind me. Slipped into the car, my fingers clenched around the steering wheel, turning my knuckles a ghostly white. My pulse resonated in every corner, in my ears, in my throat, in the space between my legs. Upon returning home, I cast my dress into the hamper as if it had committed an act of treachery against me. I transformed into a muted hue, a gentle texture. I glided through the house, a specter in my own domain, steering clear of my own image. My husband returned home later than he typically does. He pressed his lips gently against my cheek. I recoiled. He either failed to notice or chose to feign ignorance. That evening, as he extended his hand toward me in the dim light of our shared sanctuary, I surrendered to the moment. His hands carried a sense of familiarity, and the rhythm was one I recognized well. Yet, I found myself lying there, gazing at the ceiling, attempting to quiet the echo of another hand's touch. One more voice, one more essence. Once it concluded, I remarked that I felt weary. He rolled onto his side, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. I turned away from him, clutching a pillow to my abdomen as if it could somehow quell the pain. I remained composed. I felt no remorse. There was merely a peculiar sense of fullness, as if something had shattered within me, and I found myself unprepared to close it off. It transcended the mere act of a kiss. It marked the dawn of something new, and I understood that I would allow it to unfold once more. I believed that overlooking it would come naturally, that I could neatly fold the memory away into a distant, inaccessible part of my being and proceed as if nothing had changed. I had accomplished it in the past. Concealed disappointments, unfulfilled desires, and unvoiced grievances. It had become almost instinctual, yet this moment felt distinct. The kiss had imprinted itself upon my very being. The lingering impression of his lips against mine remained, accompanied by the gentle pressure of his fingers near my jaw. The lingering flavor of him danced on my tongue each morning, a vivid reminder that ignited a warmth beneath my skin whenever I caught sight of my own reflection. I made an effort to cast it aside. I convinced myself it was merely an error, a chance occurrence, a moment of reckless pleasure that held no significance. And yet, as I approached his street, I felt a familiar hesitation wash over me. I slowed my pace, scanning the road for his car, pondering whether he recalled it with the same vividness that lingered in my mind. Cutting, vibrant, perilous. For days, I steered clear of my friend's abode. I turned down her invitations, feigned headaches, and concocted errands. She accepted it without a second thought. She found herself ensnared in the web of her own ambitions, her thoughts consumed by work, and her incessant musings on renovations and vacation arrangements. Yet, I was acutely aware that I couldn't maintain this facade indefinitely. I would have to confront him once more, whether to feign or to be entirely genuine. Encountering him in an entirely different place felt like a breath of fresh air. Neutral Ground, the community center where I dedicated my time twice a month to a literacy program. As I wrapped up my session and began to gather my things, I caught sight of him in the hallway, engaged in conversation with someone close to the entrance. He donned a jacket over a dark shirt, paired with jeans, his hair falling in a slightly tousled manner. He appeared unremarkable, inviting, and yet, every fiber of my being ignited at the mere glimpse of him. He caught sight of me, our gazes intertwined. He remained expressionless. I swiftly averted my gaze, feigning preoccupation with a pile of documents clutched in my grasp. The sound of his footsteps reached my ears, heralding his arrival before his voice broke the silence. "Are you volunteering at this moment?" he inquired with a nonchalant air. I lifted my gaze. "Always have done." He rested against the doorframe, arms folded, observing me with that familiar, inscrutable gaze. "I didn't anticipate encountering you in this place." In a similar vein, a moment of stillness. "I have left something for you." A frown creased my brow. "What is this?" He retrieved a creased sheet of paper from the depths of his jacket and placed it delicately on the table's edge. "Merely a query. Nothing further." I refrained from reaching for it. I observed his fingers, noting how they hesitated against the wood for a moment that felt just a touch prolonged. "You might have sent a text." I remained seated, attempting to project an air of indifference. "You have chosen to block me." He responded with an absence of resentment. "Simply a matter of fact. I chose not to respond." He withdrew slightly, his gaze unwavering from mine. "Be well." And then he vanished, leaving only the subtle hint of the cologne that lingered in the air. Pristine, crisp, with a hint of metallic edge. After a full minute of contemplation, I finally reached for the paper. It was straightforward, his handwriting swift yet clear. "Should I request another meeting with you, simply for a conversation, would you agree? Without a name, without the constraints of time, and free from pressure." I folded it with meticulous care and tucked it into my purse, my heart racing as if I had just crossed a forbidden line. Throughout the journey home, I reminded myself to remain silent, that I had crossed a line, that it needed to end. Yet, that evening, as my husband lay asleep next to me, his breath steady and calm, I found myself reaching for the note once more. In the gentle illumination of my bedside lamp, I discovered myself crafting a response on the reverse side, almost instinctively. Indeed, at one moment, "That is all. Rest eluded me last night." My dreams were filled with a cacophony of fragmented images. His face hovered near, my husband's voice echoing from a distant room, the sharp sound of paper ripping through the air. Upon waking, I sensed a profound emptiness, as if something had been meticulously hollowed out within me. As I strolled through the morning air, I carefully tucked the note into an envelope and let it fall into the mailbox by his building. I refrained from lingering for an answer, uncertain if he would even come across it. I reassured myself that it didn't matter. 2 days later, a message found its way to me via a mutual acquaintance, a person from the center, blissfully unaware of the weight of what they were conveying. A gentle reminder: "He will be at the cafe by the park this Friday at approximately 4 o'clock. Should you wish to stop by." I ought to have known better than to go. At last, the day had come, and there I stood before the mirror, slipping into a blouse I hadn't donned in ages. The soft cream fabric caressed my skin, the low collar framed my neck, and the sleeves embraced my arms. I selected earrings that swayed gently with each turn of my head, and adorned myself with the perfume I typically reserved for special anniversaries. As I stepped into the cafe, a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach, yet my hands remained calm and composed. He sat there, poised at a quaint table by the window, a cup of coffee before him, his phone lying idle. As I drew near, he lifted his gaze, and for the first time, I detected a shift in his expression. No longer mischief, no trace of confidence, but rather a sentiment that resembled gratitude. "Hello," I remarked, easing into the chair across from him. "You arrived, and I fulfilled my promise." He inclined his head, observing me intently. "You appear transformed in a positively striking way." He wore a sly grin. "Extremely." The conversation began with an air of discomfort, drifting through trivial topics: the town's transformations, the shifting weather, his fleeting role at a design firm. Yet, beneath each exchange, the atmosphere crackled with unvoiced realities. With each forward lean, my breath hitched, Every gentle brush of his knee against mine beneath the table unraveled the very fabric of my thoughts. He didn't bring up the kiss, nor did I, but as I approached my coat towards the end, he remarked, "You know you never responded to the second question." I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. "Which second question are you referring to?" He locked his eyes with mine. "Would you desire for it to occur once more?" I gazed at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "I didn't vocalize it," he added, "yet I believe you caught it all the same." I rose deliberately, adjusting the front of my coat. "And what leads you to believe I haven't already provided an answer?" He inclined his head. "Gaz, you remain in this place." The late afternoon sun draped the pavement in a shimmering coat of gold. The air carried a chill, yet my skin felt aflame beneath the fabric of my blouse. I made my way home, unwavering and resolute, never glancing over my shoulder. Once more, I found myself standing before the mirror that night, just before drifting off to sleep. I brushed my fingers against the earring that hung delicately from my ears. I removed my blouse, folding it with precision, and tucked it away in the drawer as if hiding a cherished secret. From the bedroom, my husband inquired whether I had switched off the lights downstairs. I agreed, despite my uncertainty. I slipped into bed next to him, the lingering aroma of the cafe clinging to me, the resonance of a question still reverberating in my mind. One I had responded to not through words, but simply by being there. And I was aware. I had no intention of keeping my distance. I never mentioned that I would be coming. Silence reigned, devoid of any message, confirmation, or even a semblance of an excuse should I choose to reconsider. On Saturday morning, as I busied myself loading the dishwasher in the kitchen, my thoughts drifted to the outfit I would choose. The thought arrived unbidden, as familiar as glancing at the forecast or pondering whether we had sufficient milk. Organic, flowing, perilous. Honestly, he had occupied my thoughts ever since that day at the cafe. His question lingered in my mind. It lingered in my mind like a dense mist, shrouding the clarity of once familiar sights. I navigated my daily rituals with the precision of a meticulously crafted automaton. Tasks of washing garments, courteous exchanges with those living nearby. Yet, beneath the surface, an unsettling movement began to awaken. Free from blame, there is no shame, only the swelling pang of expectation. As the clock struck noon, I found myself before my closet, caught in a dilemma of whether I was choosing my attire for my own sake or for his approval. I selected white, a blouse that had remained untouched for years. It caressed my skin with an almost ethereal softness, a delicate lightness that was both inviting and disconcerting. I combined it with fitted jeans, understated heels, and a coat that I donned solely when I craved attention. Overlooked, noted, I informed my husband that I would be meeting a friend for coffee. He remained engrossed in his laptop, oblivious to the world around him. He inquired whether I would return in time for dinner. I expressed my uncertainty. This time, the cafe was situated further afield. This isn't our typical location, far from the place we called home. A place of neutrality, a touch of elegance, more subdued. I entered the room to discover him already settled, 2 cups awaiting our conversation before him. He hesitated to smile at first, gazed at me, taking their time to survey every inch, from head to toe. Then returning to my visage. The weight of that gaze settled deep within me. "You donned white," he remarked. I took a seat. "You requested it without uttering a word. Yet you responded in silence." He extended his hand toward the steaming cup of coffee. I observed the fluid motion of his hands, recalling how they had clutched the edge of the counter during our previous encounter. Our conversation lasted for a brief few minutes. As per usual, just the everyday occurrences, sufficiently subtle to be deemed innocuous. Yet, his leg grazed against mine under the table, and neither of us made a move to distance ourselves. It was an unexpected turn of events. What transpired thereafter? Perhaps we had both silently come to a mutual understanding, in the stillness between us, that the moment had indeed arrived long before we ever acknowledged it. He claimed the top position. He mentioned that he had something to reveal to me, a nearby local gallery. He asserted it was merely a pop-up event. I trailed behind, not due to my faith in his words, but rather out of my own desire. The stroll was brief, merely circling the block. Yet with each step, my breath grew more shallow. He refrained from touching me, his gaze lingering only as much as required. Yet, I sensed the tension building, crackling like static in the air between us. The gallery stood shuttered. He halted before it, casting a sidelong glance my way, a subtle smirk playing at the corners of his lips. That is quite disheartening. I rested against the wall, my arms crossed in contemplation. It was a certainty you had anticipated. Perhaps. Prolonged stillness. He stepped closer. Only one. His hand extended, gently sweeping a strand of hair from my cheek. Lingering in that intimate moment, his thumb brushed softly against the curve of my jaw. Leisurely. Contemplate. I allowed him to continue unimpeded. I refused to tread lightly, he declared. I murmured, in that case, refrain from doing so. This time, the kiss lingered, unhurried and deliberate. It unfolded gradually, akin to a memory resurfacing rather than a revelation unearthed. His lips met mine with a sense of assurance, yet devoid of haste. My hands found their way to his chest, fingers gently curling against the fabric. I experienced it all, his breath, his heartbeat. The heat between us no longer sought permission. Silence enveloped us. Words would only diminish its significance, leaving it less than what it truly was. Subsequently, we strolled back in the direction of the cafe. I lingered nearby, yet refrained from making contact. My heart pounded as if I had just sprinted for miles. He cast a fleeting glance in my direction. Only a single time. It was evident that he sensed it as well. The kiss held not only its fiery warmth but also the profound significance it carried. I entered my vehicle, made my way back home. The white blouse adhered to my skin, serving as a poignant reminder. The atmosphere at home was thick with stagnation. My husband had arranged the table, illuminated it with candles, and poured the wine. His smile greeted me as I entered, a testament to his pride in the gesture he had made. I envisioned an elegant dinner, he remarked. Time has passed since we last connected. I lingered in the doorway, caught in a moment that stretched beyond its intended duration. The contrast struck me with the force of a slap, the glow of his endeavor, the gentle quality of his voice. I yearned to experience a sensation, thankfulness, endearment, even the weight of guilt. Instead, I felt an emptiness within. I had changed my attire prior to taking a seat, opted for something more relaxed, rinsed the fragrance from my wrists. He recounted the events of his week to me, challenges at work, forthcoming gatherings. He posed inquiries to me, heeded my response. As his fingers brushed against mine over the table, I surrendered to the moment. Following dinner, we removed the plates in quietude. He positioned himself behind me at the sink, encircling my waist with his arms. I tensed. He brushed his lips against my neck, whispering softly about how he missed this moment. I summoned a smile. Same here. We retired for the night at an early hour. He extended his hand toward me once more. This time I chose to reply. I returned the kiss, allow him to peel away my layers with a deliberate slowness. I considered the possibility of closing the divide. Imagine a world where the axis remained unchanged. Yet I found myself unable to cease the comparisons. His lips met another's. He dances to a unique cadence. His hands, familiar with my body to such an extent, no longer sought permission. I remained awake long after he drifted into slumber, my fingers wandering along the unseen paths etched on my thigh. The air was thick with the scent of our shared past. Collaborative documents, time-worn habits, freshly laundered garments. I longed for the unknown. For the first time, I ceased the internal struggle to persuade myself that wanting it was a mistake. The reality was more straightforward than that. It was essential for me, not the excitement, not the concealment. I yearned to experience the thrill of life once more. He had caressed that part of me as if it were the sole treasure worth preserving. I shut my eyes and found no dreams waiting for me, for I had already been immersed in it. Some mornings arrived gentle and void, akin to a pristine page awaiting the initial stroke of a pen. That Monday stood out among the rest. I awoke in the hush before dawn, the heavens a mottled canvas of blue and gray. My husband shifted next to me, yet remained in slumber. I observed the rhythm of his back, rising and falling, and pondered how many iterations of myself he thought he genuinely understood, and how many he remained oblivious to as they drifted further away. He remained in slumber as I entered the cascade of the shower. I lingered beneath the scalding cascade, allowing it to bite at my shoulders, trickle down my chest, and flow over my thighs. I leaned my forehead against the cool tile, lost in the memory of a kiss shared with someone else just 2 days prior, beneath the shadow of a closed gallery. I reflected on the depth of my desire for it once more, not the instant in question, yet the emotions it stirred within me, inarguably so. In the sanctuary of the bedroom, I approached my underwear drawer and paused, caught in a moment of uncertainty. I refrained from selecting the familiar cotton or the delicate beige lace. I retrieved something unusual, a rich crimson ensemble, silken and almost imperceptible. It was not for the sake of comfort. A choice had been made. That morning I took great care in my attire, with a level of intention I hadn't experienced in months. A black skirt that embraced my hips with unapologetic confidence. A tailored top that exposed my collarbones elegantly. A coat draped carelessly over my shoulders. He had inquired of me once. Silently, it was as if the scent I wore was playfully hinted at. I have donned it now, not for the inquiry itself, but for the lingering echo of his voice when he posed the question. I informed my husband that I had some errands to run. In the quiet of the hallway, I pressed my lips softly against his cheek. His scent was a blend of shaving cream and the zest of orange peels. He smiled as if he were a man who still held faith in the beauty of everyday moments. The location of the meeting lacked any semblance of romance. A tranquil pause along the bustling highway, just 20 minutes beyond the town's edge. He had mentioned it with a nonchalant air in a message the previous evening. A modest exhibition is currently on display at the Heritage Museum. It might serve as a plausible justification. I understood that the essence transcended the mere art itself. Upon my arrival, his car was already present. He rested his weight against it, with his hands tucked away in his pockets. The sunglasses rested atop his hair, a casual accessory in place. He appeared simultaneously youthful and remarkably confident. I despised how my body responded before my mind had the chance to comprehend. "You came," he said, stepping forward. Indeed, I responded. Within the museum's walls, we wandered through chambers filled with antiquated farming implements and evocative historical photographs. Our gaze hardly brushed against them. We were merely two souls feigning the passage of time, strolling through a realm that held no significance for either of us. Restraining ourselves with each inhale, he refrained from making contact with me, yet I sensed it rising within me. The stillness that lingers in the spaces between utterances. The fleeting glimpses. His body always appeared to hover just an inch closer than it ought to be. A modest video installation flickered continuously in the last room. A cinematic exploration of forgotten train routes, the sort of film that seldom captures the audience's attention. We lingered in the distant corner, shrouded from sight. I mentioned a few thoughts regarding the soundtrack. He remarked on the notion of missing the essence. Suddenly, he pivoted towards me. "This is driving me crazy," he said, his voice low and firm. "You occupy my thoughts constantly." I swallowed, sensing the floor tilt ever so slightly beneath me. "It would be unwise to do so." "You shouldn't either," he remarked. "Yet here we find ourselves." I chose not to respond. I took a step nearer. He refrained from inquiring. I acted without a moment's pause. This kiss held a distinct quality, setting it apart from the rest. There exists a complete absence of curiosity. There is no question. The oppressive heat mingled with an insatiable hunger. Months of restraint cascading into chaos. His hand slipped beneath my coat, fingers gliding along the gentle arc of my spine, then applying steady pressure into the area just above my hips. I pressed my lips against his with a fervor that surprised even me. I yearned to dissolve the chasm that lay between my past self and the person I was evolving into. He was the one to withdraw initially, Inhalations and exhalations falter. Our foreheads gently touch, a moment suspended in time. "If we continue down this path," he whispered, "you'll find it hard to resist the urge to continue." "I already don't," I said. We lingered there for a moment, simply inhaling the stillness around us. At last, we departed from the museum. Remaining silent, the wind had begun to stir outside. My coat fluttered open a bit, and I allowed it, indifferent to the gazes around me. Seated in the car, I rested my hands in my lap, gazing out the window. He navigated the road with a measured pace, one hand firmly gripping the wheel while the other lingered near the gearshift. Near my knee, as the traffic light turned crimson, he finally broke the silence. "How about we venture out somewhere next weekend? Merely a day, away from the city." I glanced in his direction. "What is the reason behind this?" "For the reason that I desire to be by your side, without masquerading as anything other than itself." I hesitated before responding. My thoughts whirled with the intricacies, the dangers, the narratives I would need to weave. Yet, my heart had already whispered its agreement. That evening, my husband awaited my return on the porch. He cradled a wine glass in one hand, while the other grasped a fresh novel. He inquired about the nature of my day. I mentioned that it was lengthy. He pressed his lips gently to my forehead and murmured that dinner was nearly prepared. Once more, we dined by the soft glow of candlelight. He expressed his pride in my growing involvement within the community. He remarked that I appeared stunning in black. A smile graced my lips. As the night deepened, he extended his hand toward me in the stillness of the bed. I allowed him to proceed. His hands glided with deliberate slowness, each movement imbued with caution. I replied with just the right amount. I produced the appropriate sounds, ensuring my body remained warm beneath his. Yet within, I found myself in a realm altogether different. In that shadowy corner of the gallery, I felt the silk glide against my skin, tasted an unfamiliar mouth, and heard a voice, distinct and resonant, utter my name as if it held significance. Afterward, I nestled into myself and gazed at the ceiling. I held back my tears. I felt no remorse. I merely sensed the state of being awake. And I was aware that the following weekend would find me there. In the ensuing days, I conducted myself precisely as anticipated. I prepared dinner, neatly folded towels, and responded to emails. I arranged for a dental appointment, collected the dry cleaning, and replenished the bird feeder in the backyard. Had anyone inquired, they would have remarked that I appeared satisfied. My husband even remarked on it during breakfast one morning. Commented that I appeared more buoyant, more engaged. He smiled as he uttered those words. I returned the smile. I was mastering the art of draping myself in comfort as if it were an extension of my very being. Yet within, I found myself in an entirely different realm. Once more, I found myself in that hallway, his lips pressed against mine, his fingers tracing the curve of my spine. Seated in the passenger side of his car, I observed the trees dissolve into a blur as we journeyed toward an undefined destination. I found myself enveloped in a clandestine truth. As time passed within its embrace, it increasingly revealed itself as the sole realm where my true essence could flourish. Though I hadn't solidified any plans, a quiet certainty settled within me that I would accompany him that weekend. It was never about fleeing. It was not an act of defiance. It was a moment of pure clarity. I discovered a version of myself that felt foreign, yet I was reluctant to part with her. Yet, as I prepared for the inevitable, I reminded myself that I needed to set things straight at home, or at the very least, give the impression of doing so. I proposed to secure dinner reservations for Saturday evening, fully aware that we would not honor them. I mentioned to my husband that I was considering a trip to the city to see my sister. He nodded, his mind elsewhere, refraining from seeking further clarification. I pondered whether, beneath the surface, he felt an inkling of awareness. Yet, if he did, he swiftly concealed it from view. On Thursday, I encountered her, his mother, my friend. She had extended an invitation for lunch, effortlessly casual as ever. She spoke of the familiar topics, her heavy workload and the journey that lay ahead, a culinary creation she yearned to experiment with. She made no reference to him. Not merely once, but he lingered in every shadow of that house. The faint trace of his scent still clung to the couch pillows. By the back door, a pair of his shoes rested quietly. His voice resonated in the corridors of my mind, and I found myself stealing glances toward the hallway time and again. She extended a warm invitation for coffee. I acquiesced. My hands quivered ever so slightly as I raised the cup. I reassured myself that it was merely caffeine. As I prepared to depart, she accompanied me to the door, inquiring if all was well. Her voice had shifted ever so slightly, unquestionably innocent, inquisitive, perhaps even tender. I smiled too hastily. Naturally, what reason could there possibly be for it not to be? She tilted her head, her gaze lingering on me for a moment that stretched just a heartbeat too long. Then she remarked that you seem different these days, as if deep in thought. I laughed, though it felt contrived. Perhaps I am. Her fingers brushed against my arm, a gentle reminder that thoughts can lead us into perilous territory. As I departed from her abode, an unexpected sense of vulnerability washed over me. The whole journey back, her words echoed in my thoughts, pondering the perilous nature of contemplation. She was utterly unaware. Perhaps she did after all. Women possess an uncanny ability to perceive subtle changes in their surroundings, even when those changes elude precise description. Under the cover of darkness, I carefully assembled a modest bag. I recounted to my husband once more the tale of my sister. I pressed my lips to his in a gentle good night and settled beside him, enveloped by the shadows of the night. With eyes wide open, the heart thunders against the mattress. At the break of dawn, he set out for work, leaving the quiet of the morning behind. 15 minutes passed in silence after the door clicked shut, and only then did I begin to dress. I donned the same crimson lingerie, a dress that was unfamiliar to him. Subtle heels adorned my feet, and a hint of makeup graced my face, a long-forgotten ritual I had not embraced in months. I appeared as a stranger to myself, or rather, I resembled a fragment of myself that I had long since interred. He collected me from the outskirts of town. Initially, there was silence between us. We cruised along with the windows slightly ajar, the wind tousling our hair. Soft melodies floated from the radio, unmemorable. As we journeyed toward the next city, he extended his hand toward mine. I allowed him to have it. I gazed out the window, holding on tightly to the moment. We paused in a quaint seaside village. Silence. Modest. Upon our arrival at the bed and breakfast, we were greeted by the enchanting aromas of lavender and salt that filled the air. The woman at the desk inquired whether we were marking a special occasion. He agreed. I chose not to correct him. We strolled along the winding streets, enjoyed lunch by the shimmering water, and savored a bottle of wine beneath the shelter of a canvas umbrella. He posed inquiries that had never crossed his lips until now. Reflecting on my childhood, I ponder my regrets and the dreams that danced through my mind during sleepless nights. I responded with honesty, not due to any obligation, but rather for the desire to articulate my thoughts with unfiltered honesty, if only this once. He listened with an intensity one hadn't experienced in ages. He chuckled at my wit, questioned my skepticism, and brushed my knee under the table just frequently enough to leave me gasping for air. That day, our lips remained unconnected once more. Our interactions remained strictly within the realm of the casual and the public. Yet, an unspoken bond formed between us, a presence that is unwavering and irrefutable. That evening, within the confines of the inn, I lingered before the mirror, lost in thought for what felt like an eternity. I removed my dress with deliberate slowness, gazing at my reflection as though encountering myself anew. I heard a gentle knock, a single soft rap on the bedroom door. I hesitated before responding. I pressed my fingers to my stomach, closed my eyes, and felt the burden of every choice that had brought me to this moment. At long last, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. He remained there, a figure of stillness, devoid of a smile, lacking any words. I moved aside, granting him entry. We remained untouched. We lingered at the edge of the bed, our shoulders gently touching. The atmosphere surrounding us throbbed with intensity. "I don't want to ruin your life," he said abruptly. I shifted my gaze toward him, In that case, refrain from doing so, yet I acknowledged with a nod. That night, as we lay side by side, fully clothed, sharing whispered fragments of our souls into the enveloping darkness, I came to a realization I had long been too afraid to acknowledge. It transcended the physical realm. It had never been. It revolved around the essence of recognition, noted, selected. In that modest rented room, distant from all that was known, I sensed a rekindling of belonging, not for him, to no one at all. For my own reflection, it was meant to be the final occasion. It was an unspoken pact, silently present, lingering in the gaps of our dialogue, a brief escape from the everyday, a fleeting getaway, and then we would part ways, each returning to the distinct paths of our lives, my husband and I, to my rituals, to the security of the framework. He awaited whatever semblance of normalcy would follow me. Yet, as we said our goodbyes on Sunday, with him kissing the top of my hand rather than my lips and holding the door open without a gentle touch on the small of my back, I realized he had merely unlocked a more profound passage within me. As Monday morning dawned, I found myself seamlessly returning to the familiar cadence of my home life. At precisely 7:10, the kettle reached its boiling point. The washing machine whirred to life at 8:15. At precisely 9, the neighbor's dog erupted into a chorus of barks, as if on cue. Yet, I sensed myself traversing the entirety of it as if I were merely an inhabitant of a borrowed form. My gestures were precise. My smiles came effortlessly. My husband pressed a gentle kiss to my cheek, offered a sweet compliment about my hair, and inquired if I wished to make plans for the weekend. I suggested we observe how the week unfolds. He refrained from pressing. Yet, the part of me that had blossomed in that serene coastal town, the part that had shared breath with him in the stillness of night without uttering a word, would not be silenced. He had departed, leaving in his wake a reflection of myself I never realized I required. And now I bore it like a hidden truth beneath my flesh. 3 days slipped away in quietude. Silence reigns, devoid of messages or invitations. I was taken by surprise. I had convinced myself that distance was essential. I enveloped it within me, akin to a pristine white sheet, persuasive and comforting. Yet, by Thursday, the stillness had transformed. It had ceased to be space. It was a burden, an escalating, restless ache nestled in my spine, tightening with each passing hour of his silence. As dusk settled, I wandered aimlessly. I wandered through streets that had once been familiar, yet now they seemed strangely foreign. The boutiques, the streetlights, the meticulously pruned hedges. Everything appeared muted, as if mere stage elements in a life I no longer completely inhabited. The sound of my heels echoed gently on the pavement as I strolled toward the park. I had no intention of going there. My feet simply carried me away. I settled onto a bench beside the winding path, sheltered under a canopy of trees stripped of their leaves. The breeze whispered the initial secrets of autumn. Moist foliage, the subtle aroma of smoke wafting from an invisible source. I wrapped my coat around me more snugly and remained motionless, attuned to the sporadic sounds of joggers, the playful barks of dogs, and snippets of conversations drifting past. And then there he was. He was not approaching me. His gaze was entirely elsewhere, not even brushing against my presence. He lingered at the pond's edge, hands tucked into his pockets, observing the water's gentle ripples, a stillness that pierced the soul with its beauty. I remained still. I held my breath, yet an unspoken intuition seemed to guide him. An unseen thread, a current of focus weaving through the air. He pivoted gradually, and our gazes intertwined. He remained expressionless. He approached without a moment's pause, settling beside me as if it were preordained, as though we had left no loose ends whatsoever. "I never expected to see you," he remarked. I gazed at him with a sense of uncertainty. "What brings you to this place?" He gave a slight shrug. "At times, I find myself drawn to this place, lost in thought. And you?" "Likewise." He pivoted his head to meet my gaze. "Deceiver." I released a breath that might have been interpreted as a laugh or a sob, depending on the listener's perspective. We lingered in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. The sun sank gradually, draping his face in a warm, amber glow. In that light he appeared more aged. Not due to age, but rather from something etched into his expression. A yearning, perhaps, or perhaps an understanding. He was the one to shatter the stillness first. I will be departing at the end of next week. I received a job offer in Denver. A sensation plummeted within me, akin to a stone sinking into water. For what duration? I inquired. He gave a slight shake of his head. Uncertain. Perhaps indefinitely. I averted my gaze. My throat constricted. So soon. I had no intention of revealing this to you. I believed it would simplify matters. Who exactly finds this easier? He remained silent. Instead, he delved into his coat pocket and retrieved a carefully folded note. He failed to pass it to me. He simply cradled it between his fingers. "If you wish to see me once more before my departure," he remarked, setting the note down on the bench that lay between us. "The decision ultimately rests in your hands." I cast my gaze upon the note. The wind pulled insistently at the edge, yet I held my fingers firmly against the corner to maintain its position. He rose gradually, hesitating for a moment. "I have no regrets about any of it," he stated. "Yet, I refuse to become just another subject of your deception." He turned and walked away, leaving silence in his wake. My gaze lingered on the note. I chose not to open it. Not immediately. I lingered on that bench as the sky deepened into shades of violet, watching the lamps ignite one by one in a soft, flickering glow. As I finally revealed it, I found it to be quite straightforward. A location, a moment, and a trio of words. No further elucidation required. I slipped it into my coat pocket and made my way home, moving at a more leisurely pace than usual. That night, slumber eluded me. I reclined beside my husband, attuned to the rhythm of his steady breaths. I observed the contour of his hand as it lay upon the blanket, the gentle impression left by his wedding ring. I searched my memory for the last instance we lingered in the night, lost in conversation. The last moment his fingers brushed against me as if he were reluctant to let go. I pondered whether he ever realized the extent of my absence, even as I stood so close to him. As dawn broke, he pressed his lips to mine in a tender farewell before heading off to work. He inquired whether I desired anything from the store. No. He departed. As I settled at the kitchen table, the note lay open before me, my fingers gliding over the handwriting repeatedly, as if it held secrets yet to be uncovered. I didn't know if I would go. Yet I was aware of this. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen him again. Yet, I found it impossible to feign indifference. Life presents us with moments that often come unannounced, lacking any form of ceremony. No tumultuous heavens, no breathless epiphanies. It is the serene understanding that, regardless of what unfolds ahead, you have already crossed the threshold of no return. That morning, as I sat at the kitchen table with his note laid out before me, I felt an undeniable sense of arrival. The paper radiated warmth between my fingers, as though it still held the lingering heat of his touch. The handwriting, known and precise, bore a slight tilt, yet remained steady. Mine certainly would have. I revisited the address, then the time once more. Saturday, 4 in the afternoon. Only a single line, devoid of emotion or plea. A door slightly ajar, neither fully closed nor completely open. Should I choose to navigate it, it would be entirely on my own terms. Throughout the day, I navigated my surroundings as though submerged in water. I folded the towels 3 times, then refolded them twice more. I meandered through the house, cradling a mug of tea that had long since lost its warmth. I held back my tears. I remained calm. What I experienced was an emotion that eluded precise definition. A sentiment akin to grief, not for what I was on the verge of losing, but for the version of myself that I could no longer embody. I envisioned a scenario where I would not attend. I practiced the narrative I would share with myself. It was genuine yet ephemeral, a fleeting illness, a treasure to keep hidden, yet not to chase after. I would seek the comforting embrace of the known, the soft dimming of sensation, the serene embrace of a union that had long since conformed to the contours of stillness. I would endeavor, with all my heart, to erase the memory of what it was to be desired without the weight of duty. Yet, the deeper I delved into that vision of life, the more I felt an overwhelming sense of suffocation. That evening, I found myself nestled in bed next to my husband. He immersed himself in the pages, the lamp's soft glow creating delicate shadows that danced across his features. I observed the subtle movement of his lips as he traced the lines of the page before him. His hand lay upon his thigh, a single finger nestled between the pages of the chapters. I endeavored to recall the sensation of his touch, striving to avoid any comparisons. I endeavored to evoke the gentleness I remembered he once possessed. And I discovered it, a recollection, far away yet vivid, the formative years of our journey. His breath lingered against my neck, his voice cracking when he whispered that he didn't deserve me. I extinguished my light, then shifted onto my side. He arrived moments later, his arm lightly grazing against mine. Silence enveloped us. He pressed his lips to my shoulder, lost in thought, already slipping away. I lay awake, my eyes wide open, attuned to the cadence of his breathing as the first light gently filtered through the blinds. The following day unfolded with a deliberate calmness. I navigated my day as if it were a carefully crafted dance, each step a part of the familiar routine. Engaging in the ritual of grocery shopping, tending to messages that beckon for attention, lingering at stoplights, perhaps a moment too long. I refrained from glancing at the note once more. I was not obligated to. The address was etched into my very being. As Saturday dawned, I expressed to my husband my need for some solitude. I mentioned my plans to explore an art exhibit, perhaps followed by a visit to a bookstore afterward. His lips brushed softly against my temple. "Take your time," he said. Indeed, I followed through. As I left the town behind, an enveloping silence accompanied me on the road. Without music, without GPS, the path felt known, though the endpoint remained a mystery. My grip on the wheel was firm, yet a tumultuous sensation twisted in my stomach, something beyond mere nerves. It was necessity, coupled with the understanding that this had transcended his own concerns. This narrative revolved around my experiences. The dwelling rested softly and silently at the fringe of a tree-lined trail. Isolated yet accessible, undoubtedly a rental, transitory. "Join us." The gravel crackled beneath my tires as I eased into the driveway. I lingered in silence for a full minute, the engine quiet, the key resting in my palm. Then I emerged. He swung the door wide just as my knuckles were about to make contact. Silence enveloped us. Not at this moment. He moved aside, allowing me to pass into a room bathed in the soft glow of filtered afternoon light. A humble abode. A sofa with a modest pile of books resting on the table. A bag, half-zipped, rests near the window. It lacked the warmth of a space that had been truly inhabited. He had not sought to embellish it with notions of romance. That brought me solace. He lingered behind me for a moment, refraining from any contact, merely inhaling and exhaling. "I didn't think you'd come," he said at last. "I nearly refrained from doing so. Yet you did." I pivoted to meet his gaze. Indeed, the stillness that lingered between us carried a new weight, neither burdensome nor ambiguous. It brimmed with all the unspoken words that lingered between us. I perched on the edge of the couch, and he settled beside me, maintaining a deliberate space between us. His hand lay upon the cushion that separated us, palm facing downwards. A gift rather than an obligation. "I'm not quite sure what this signifies," I remarked. We lingered in that moment, the gravity of our existence palpable in the silence. At last, I reclined, releasing a deep breath. "I have never ventured into this territory before," I confessed. "Falsehood?" The number was selected by me. That brought a gentle, almost wistful smile to his face. He extended his arm, at last grasping my hand with his. His thumb brushed delicately along the curve of my wrist, just as he had once caressed my jaw in the kitchen. "In a time before any of this unfolded, I want you to understand," he said, "that this doesn't need to transform into something else to hold significance." "It holds significance already," I remarked. "That is the issue at hand." He pressed his lips against mine. "There is no immediate need for action. I find myself devoid of hunger, absolutely certain, and I returned his kiss. In the later hours, we found ourselves sprawled on the couch, limbs intertwined, silence enveloping us. My head rests gently on his chest, his fingers gliding over my arm in soft, lingering caresses. Our conversation never ventured into the realm of what lies ahead. We never spoke of farewells. We merely occupied space, in unison, halted. At one moment, he inquired whether I wished to remain for the night. I gave a slight shake of my head. I must return to my abode. He remained silent. He escorted me to my vehicle. His hand rested at the small of my back as if it had been destined to be there all along. The heavens had taken on the hue of a battered plum, deep and full of promise. I swung the door open, hesitated for a moment, and lifted my gaze to meet his. "Could you give me a call?" I inquired. "If you wish for me to do so." I chose not to respond. I entered, shut the door behind me, and set off on my journey. That evening, I made my way back to my home, to the porch light that remains aglow, to the partner who lingered with a gentle kiss and an inquiry about the evening meal. I responded to him. A smile graced my lips. I inquired about how his day had unfolded. As I nestled into the sheets next to him, a sense of warmth enveloped us both. The body lingers, infused with the lingering warmth of another's breath. For the first time, I felt a sense of wholeness. A sense of completeness enveloped me. Even if only for a fleeting instant, I once held the conviction that to return was to reverse. That if I returned home, re-entered this life, this house, this marriage, I might somehow wipe away the events that had transpired, as though his absence might purify the existence of our togetherness. Yet I possess greater understanding now. You do not come back unchanged. You bring remnants along with you, whispers of stillness, things that remain hidden from view, a fleeting look, a warmth, the form of a name that has slipped from your spoken words. Yet you find a way to weave them into the fleeting moments that exist between smoothing the sheets and pouring that first cup of morning coffee, as if smuggled secrets reside within your heart. The days that followed unfolded with an unremarkable simplicity, the most ordinary I had experienced in months. They were, without a doubt, the most intolerable. Aromatic notes of basil mingled with the fresh scent of dish soap in the kitchen. The radio emitted its familiar gentle stream of news. My husband inquired about the books that remained unread by me, films I have yet to see. I replied with subtle nods, vague answers, and carefully timed smiles. I did not deceive, not in the conventional manner. I allow the silences to resonate more profoundly than the truth itself. Yet, amidst the stillness, I held onto the final vision of him, positioned at the threshold of that leased abode. His hands lingered with the warmth of my own. His expression remained unervingly motionless, as though he were committing to memory something he feared to request from me. I never mentioned that he shouldn't call. I had not instructed him to do so either. He did not. I reassured myself that this was the preferable path. We had expressed all that was necessary to express. The moment had slipped away, or perhaps it had found its resolution, as particles settled in a space untouched by time. On a quiet afternoon, my friend reached out with a call. His mother. Her voice remained unchanged, a familiar echo of the past, cozy, refined, infused with a vibrant dynamism that propelled discussions forward, leaving no room for questions to linger. He departed. She uttered, "Denver." I spoke too hastily. "Are you all right?" she inquired. The question hung in the air, peculiar and unexpected, especially since I was not the one bidding farewell. "I am well." She hesitated for a moment before continuing. "He mentioned that you showed him kindness." Her voice held an unmistakable quality, neither judgmental nor inquisitive, simply present. A declaration drifted into the air, lingering for all to hear. "I hold on to that hope," I declared. I made an effort to be. The call concluded with an air of simplicity, devoid of any formalities. She refrained from pressing, yet I lingered with her words for hours afterward. Your kindness towards him was evident. A desire to laugh stirred within me. Kindness seemed insufficient to capture the essence. not in the manner I had caressed him, yearned for him, stolen away from him. Yet maybe it truly was, because I had never attempted to possess him, only to encounter him in that serene space where no one claimed another. And all around me, it seemed as though I had been granted the freedom to embrace life with greater intensity. A week went by, then yet another. He failed to make the call. I have not composed anything, not that I lacked the desire. Yet, the creation we had forged could not be molded into another form. It was never intended to span the miles, or rendition. It had thrived in that solitary season. Concise, flaming, whole in its lack of wholeness. One evening, my husband discovered me perched outside, a glass of wine in hand, lingering in the twilight long after the sun had dipped below the horizon. He made his way onto the porch, rested against the railing, observing me in a brief, contemplative silence. "There has been a transformation in you," he uttered. Silently, I raised my gaze. "In what manner?" "I'm uncertain. Merely, you seem more subdued. Not sorrowful. Simply elsewhere." I chose not to respond. I was uncertain of how to proceed. I yearned to share it all with him, yet hold back every word simultaneously. That he had committed no wrongdoing. That I had effortlessly unwound in the void of something missing. I was unaware of my absence until that familiar sensation washed over me once more. He took a seat next to me. His hand sought out mine. "I recognize that I have allowed circumstances to meander away from my grasp," he uttered. "I was under the impression that you appreciated the stillness. I believed we were in a good place. We existed," I declared. "Perhaps we continue to be." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I simply cannot bear the thought of losing you." I shifted my gaze toward him. He appeared weary, yet it was not the result of age or toil. In the quest to uncover what once adorned my exterior, I searched within for remnants of a self long forgotten. "I remain steadfastly by your side," I declared. Indeed, it was not a falsehood. Yet, he had not completely discovered me either. I found myself adrift, no longer tethered to a single place. I found my place in fleeting instances. Now, I select my lingerie with purpose, even in the absence of an audience. As I entered the room, I was acutely conscious of my own presence. Not for its appearance, yet it was all about the sensation, the manner in which I caressed my husband. Not from a sense of obligation, yet it was a decision made willingly, measured and unhurried, even when my thoughts occasionally drifted to distant realms. The subsequent night, I surrendered to him in a passionate embrace. Softly, with a vitality I haven't felt in months, he wept afterward. Not weeping, only quiet tears that gathered and streamed down. He embraced me with an intensity that felt more profound than ever before. It was as though he sensed a change, an unspoken shift that eluded our ability to articulate. I allowed him to continue without interruption. I allowed him to embrace me. I allowed him to embrace whatever narrative he required to find solace. Afterward, I found myself standing alone in the bathroom. The mirror reflects merely the contours of my form. I held no disdain for myself. I too struggled with self-love, yet I came to comprehend my own essence. That weekend, I strolled along the perimeter of the very park where fate had once conspired to bring us together by chance. The leaves had started their gentle descent, sharp and twisting at the borders. I approached the bench we once occupied together and took a seat, my mind drifting absent-mindedly. There was no one there to greet me, yet I sensed his presence lingering, not at my side, not in a manner steeped in romanticism or ethereal charm, yet within the expanse of my being that had unfurled at his initial words, "Careful driving," I murmured, just above the breath of the breeze. My sincere gratitude, not for the rendezvous, yet it is what brings me back to my true self. Even if only for a fleeting moment, even if it happens just a single time,